Have you ever prayed but never got an answer, and wondered if God was really there? Did you feel all hope was gone, but in His time He came along and answered the prayer you thought was gone? There is no prayer too small, for God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember, there is no prayer too small. I have read, if you will ask, you shall receive. No matter what it is, I still believe. There is no prayer too small, and even when we fall, He gives us just exactly what we need. There is no prayer too small, for God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember, there is no prayer too small. No prayer too small. He always knows what's right. God hears them all. There is no prayer too small. My God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember, there is no prayer too small. No prayer too small. No prayer too small. God hears them all.
Hello, my name is Ralf Friedrichs. I'm an addiction recovery coach and the host of the Take Your Life Back Today show. As an addiction recovery coach, I want to share something with you, and let me be crystal clear to leave an everlasting impact upon you. Just imagine being buried alive. You're in a coffin, but you know you're not dead. You don't know how to get out of that coffin. You tried lifting the lid, but the enormous weight upon the lid prevents you from opening the lid. You tried banging on the lid to maybe unsettle the dirt, and somebody might start digging their way down towards you. This is what it's like to feel at the lowest point of alcohol and drug addiction. You know you need help, you know you can't do it on your own, but you don't know where to turn for help. In reality, there are probably people standing right near your grave. You just don't know that. You just think you're going to die. Usually, though, people don't think about death when they're habitually abusing drugs and alcohol. In order to feed an addiction, you have to be great at repressing the fear of death. I often ask you, my audience, did it ever cross your mind while you were abusing drugs and alcohol that maybe, just maybe, you might overdose and take something away that God had given you called your life? And if you don't care about your life and you're so selfish enough to take your life away from your people like your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your husband, your wife, your children, and your grandchildren, with this, let me leave one last thought. Don't be like the person I just spoke about in the beginning of this, that waited and waited and waited until it was way too late. Instead, pick up the phone and call me at 844-405-HELP, and I promise you I'll help you take your life back. How to get rid of the local drug dealer. Suppose for a moment you live next door to a drug house. Cars queue up to your street. Drug abusers loiter in front of your house or apartment. Gunfire occasionally disturbs your sleep, and in the morning you might find derelicts sleeping it off on your front yard. Whether you're a yuppie rehabber, downwardly mobile artist, aging homeowner, white, ethnic, Hispanic, Asian, or African American, you are in danger the moment you step out your door, and you know it. Let's fix this. Suppose you try to fight back. You call the police, detailing your knowledge of your neighbor's illicit enterprises. Now what? Do you expect them to surveil the building, confirm your suspicion, raid the drug dealer's home, and make your neighborhood safe again for decent citizens like yourself? You might expect that, but it probably will not ever happen. Why not, you might ask? Well, your first call most likely would be meaningless. If you called 911, they'd say it wasn't an emergency. If you called your local police station, they probably wouldn't even have the manpower to seriously pursue the information you provided. Most squad cars on the street are radio police, meaning they respond only to 911 dispatcher. Not even their district commander can pull them off 911 duty to check on your complaint. Even if you get past these initial frustrations, you're going to have a hard time closing down your neighborhood dope house. Let's say you and your group are like-minded neighbors and are able to get a meeting with your local police commander, and he promises to check out your complaint. In practice, this often means uniformed police will cruise down your street, stopping some of the likely offenders for not-so-friendly chat. If that can't scare the bad guys away and you keep complaining, they might stage a bust. And that will usually slow up a well-organized drug dealer for a couple of days at most. In the event one of those bad guys is sent to jail for a long time, keep in mind that it requires 3 busts involving certain well-known quantities of drugs one of the drug dealers associated with usually will take over the store. By then, your block will have deteriorated for quite a few years. The 1700 blocks of West Superior was once disfigured by an extremely active drug house. Then a few years ago, organizer Pepe Fau stepped in. At the time, Fau worked for the Chicago Alliance for Neighborhood Safety. He itched to try something new against drug dealers, but the Superior Street Block Club elected to stay with conventional measures. They worked painstakingly through every step of the scenario above. That took about 2 years. When those efforts ultimately proved futile, Fau got his chance. First, the Block Club went into court to ask judges to make it a condition of neighborhood dope dealers' probation that, unless he lived there, he would not be allowed on that particular block. The Block Club had discovered that breaking probation is an administrative offense, and therefore the standards of evidence is determining a violation were less stricter than in criminal offenses. To have the offender locked up for all they needed was a preponderance of evidence that the terms of probation had been violated. It sounded slick enough to be a good plan. Sure enough, said Fau, a guy gets out, and it is almost immediately on the same block that he started. Somebody calls us, we call the police, but the police wouldn't enforce the conditions of probation because they don't know anything about it. Let the court enforce that, they say. That was the end of the new tactic of the domestic war on drugs. Around this time, David DeValal, an organizer with the Northwest Community Organization, was working less than 2 miles away from Superior Street Drug House with other groups of neighbors frustrated by the vagrant sale of narcotics on their blocks. He too had gone the conventional route, talking to police commanders, feeling encouraged by the initial spate of arrests, and ultimately realizing that nothing much had changed. Like Pepe Fowl, he longed to try something different. DeVal took a seemingly conventional approach. He formed a committee, Citizens United for Safety, drawn up from the block clubs, including one of the Superior Street. The committee decided to study the whole network of law enforcement, the local police station, the state's attorney office, and Central Police Department's Assets Forfeiture Unit, the Corporation Council, and the city's Departments of Housing and Inspectional Services. The latter of two have roles of shuttering buildings that house unlawful activities in the present of public nuisance. DeVal interviewed representatives of each agency, emerging with a thorough knowledge of each agency's relationships to the other agency. It was a slow work. Okay, DeVal's NCO director said to him one day, "But where's this all leading us to?" DeVal admitted that he didn't know yet, but he was working on it. That's when he got the idea to diagram the lines of communication between agencies, up and down, across. He connected them by solid lines if they had good communication, dotted lines if they didn't communicate very well. There weren't too many solid lines, he said. That realization led to the CFU's task force, which brought together representatives from each of the public agencies and some of the CUF's committee members. We went to the agency and asked if they'd be willing to try something a little different, and they said they would be, said DeVal. At the first meeting of the CUF's meeting task force, a wondrous thing happened. Dotted lines were made solid. The state's attorney, for instance, said he'd like to go after the owners of the drug house under nuisance abatement laws, but his staff didn't have the time to do these searches. No problem. It turned out that the Department of Inspectional Services had them on the computer. All the state's attorney had to do was call. They'd punch in the address, and the owner's name would pop up. After a few more meetings, the task force plan was complete. CUFs would inform the police and their local aldermen of the existence of the drug house. The alderman would write the owner and ask for a meeting to discuss the problem. If the owner didn't respond, the alderman would contact the police to see if the owner's name appeared on his list of suspected narcotics dealers. If so, the police would call the Central Police Department's Assets Forfeiture, which seizes property suspected of being involved in illegal activity. If not, David King, supervisor of the state's attorney narcotics unit, will call the owner up pointedly and explain Illinois' laws on nuisance abandonment and unlawful use of buildings, including the unhappy implication for the owner of asset forfeiture, and the willingness of the grand jury, this being America and all, to hear the owner's side of the story before considering indictment. The hope was that the landlord would throw out the drug-dealing tenants, or if the landlord was a dope dealer himself, would cease the operation out of the building in order to preserve the property. It seems to have worked. Of 10 buildings targeted by the CFU's task force, police records and investigatory information indicate that drug activity has ceased in 7 of those 10. In another, drug activity has halted through more conventional means. In still another, the drug dealer had a fire in her building, ran outside stuffing drugs under her coat, and was busted by police at the fire scene. Though she's not currently in custody, she probably figured her luck at the address had gone bad. 114th District Tactical Unit Lieutenant observed. In any event, she is believed to have ceased operations within the area. In the last of the 10 buildings, the dealer has so far outfoxed police by rotating his operation among several different buildings owned by relatives of him in the neighborhood. The CFU's plan is not a silver bullet for the local drug war, however. True 1700 block Superior has been cleaned up. They can sit out on their stoops now. They couldn't do that before, said Fowl. But the neighbors on adjoining streets have seen the same drug dealers move into their blocks now. And the CFU's plan doesn't work with the corner drug dealers, who has nothing to fear from the twin hammers of assets forfeiture and nuisance abatement. After a few months of internal reorganization, Fowl has joined NCO and taken over CFU, while DeVal remains at NCO but has moved on to other issues. CFU's is studying the results of its first efforts and looking for new ways to confront drug dealers of all kinds. While it is difficult for either the police or the CUFS to say that with certainly exactly what is going on in the 10 targeted buildings, CUFS is not convinced that the sale of drugs has stopped in some of them. Another problem is that only one of the 10 buildings was on CUF's original list of dope houses. One. To get the CUFS plan in motion, the task force agreed to the police department's list of dope houses rather than go after the ones that have been disturbed the lives of CUFS committee members. Still, all concerned hope to expand success of the CUFS plan. Assistant State's Attorney David King believes that it can work. When you see owners putting up for rent signs looking for legitimate tenants, you can see the results. He is now seeking Cook County Board funding to hire 6 assistant state attorneys and contingent of investigative administrative personnel to implement CUFS-style programs countrywide. Knowing that money is tight in Cook County and mindful perhaps that much of it is likely to happen during the current political season, King has asked the Illinois Criminal Justice Authority, which distributes federal monies for law enforcement, for a grant to hire these new 6 attorneys. Meanwhile, CUFS would like to expand its base of operation and is looking for another interesting citizens, community groups, and block clubs within the area to help get these drug dealers out of the streets. This is an example of what Chicago did to fight and get drug dealers out of the neighborhood. Utilize this example as a template within your own neighborhood, within your own legislation, within your own police department, within your own neighbors. Utilize this as a template and start fighting and getting rid of these drug dealers in your neighborhood. Take care.
but never got an answer, and wondered if God was really there. Did you feel all hope was gone, but in His time He came along and answered the prayer you thought was gone? There is no prayer too small, for God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember, there is no prayer too small. Will ask, you shall receive. No matter what it is, I still believe. just exactly what we need. There is no prayer too small, for God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember, there is no prayer too small. No prayer too small. He always knows what's right. God hears them all. There is no prayer too small. My God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember,